Here comes the pain. Boston College basketball lands their first commitment of the class of 23, and it's a big-time defensive commitment for Earl Grant.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here. Some men's basketball news is going to be our topic of conversation today. Fred Payne, a class of 23 combo guard from Texas, has committed to the Eagles. Now, Payne is a 3-star recruit on 247sports.com. Their composite score, which takes a whole bunch of different rankings and puts them together, has him a lot higher than what 247 has him as. But this is a big deal for Boston College. This is the first commitment of the class of 23. I did not know how quickly they would go and pull the trigger, but this is around the time that BC basketball and most basketball teams start to grab those recruits for the next class. And Payne lands here and gives BC another recruit that fills the mold of what Earl Grant is building here at Boston College. Payne is not a huge scorer. He's got some offensive skills to him. It's not like you're going to be throwing a guy out there that cannot do anything on the offensive end. But he prides himself on his defense. He got his recruitment because of the way he plays on defense. He's a 6'3" guard, which is good size for that kind of position. And all of the scouting reports praise what he can do on the defensive end. Now, Jamie Shaw of on3sports.com, they're another recruiting site, they gave a little scouting report, I think, that gives you some good analysis on Payne. So it says, Fred Payne is a lefty guard with great pace. He can get to his spots off the bounce using a crafty handle and has the strength to get his defenders on his hip and keep him there. Payne is a confident scorer, able to finish at each level. The lateral quickness may come into question, but he plays on the defensive end with a purpose. The sturdy lead guard has excellent touch, and while he can get tunnel vision at times, he does see the floor well. Again, that's Jamie Shaw of on3sports.com. I mean, he definitely sounds like the model of what Boston College has in Chaz Kelly. Chaz Kelly is like the 2022 recruit that you're not talking about yet, because everyone's talking about Armani Mighty, DJ Hand. It's DJ Hand now on the BC Eagles page, and Prince of Legby. So Kelly is also a combo guard, 6'3", who is known for defense. BC is clearly making their roster in the mold of guys that can do things on the defensive end. They want two-way players that can be effective on the defensive side of the ball and also score. And I think Payne does that. Now, Fred Payne was an interesting, his journey on this recruiting trail is really kind of interesting because, recruits as they're sophomores, freshmen, they start to get some buzz. Fred Payne had none of that. And he started to get a lot of buzz when there was a recruiting showcase, I think it was called Big Hoops, that he was in with Armani Mighty. I think Armani Mighty was actually on his team. And Jamie Shaw of On3 Sports was like, wow, this guy is something. He's going to get a lot of attention. And then all of a sudden the offers started to really start to fly in. He had offers from Houston, Ole Miss, St. Louis, North Texas, Tulane, and those were some of his final 5 as well. And his recruitment started to really pick up. Now, Boston College, they got in on that quick. I'm sure they were probably watching, Armani Mighty, and they were like, who's that kid over there? This kid can play some defense. He fits our mold, that gritty, not pretty mold, pretty well. Well, they get in, they get that offer, and Payne was just smitten with them. He said, I chose Boston College because it was the best fit and the coaches made me feel at home. I also like the style of play and they have a history of developing guards like me. He said, head coach Earl Grant flew out to watch me work out at 7 a.m, he continued. That made them jump all over the programs from the minute they started recruiting me because they always showed love. Boston College recruits underrated guards and dogs, and I feel like that's where I'm going to get better as a player and a person. So you're starting to see Earl Grant's mantra, this gritty not pretty, this defensive, under-recruited, we're going to make you guys into something more. This is making a big difference on the recruiting trail. Now, is Fred Payne a elite recruit, a blue chip? No, he's not. But you don't need him to be. You don't, and we'll get into, there's a blue chipper out there, or a guy that's on their radar that could be that, that crown jewel of this class. But Payne, I think, really does do a lot. When you have Mekhi Ashton Langford leaving, and you may have DeMar Langford, who knows where he's going to be in a year. I mean, I'm assuming he's going to pull out of the NBA draft, but he could still be around and he could have another year. But I'm assuming after next year, if he really wants to go to the NBA, he's going to do it soon. So you're going to have some room at guard. You have Chaz Kelly, you have DJ Hand. You can bring in Fred Payne to really fill a role here. You're starting to build some really good depth here at Boston College, and you're getting guys that fit your molds. You're getting guys that are going to play defense, and I think that's what's really exciting about Fred Payne. Now, in a moment, I'm going to get into why Fred Payne is building something here with Earl Grant that is going to sustain Boston College moving forward. You're going to want to hear my thoughts on that. But first, let me tell you about RockAuto.com. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible to find your local chain with what you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questions and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have the computer in your hand. You can use RockAuto.com on your phone or tablet and find everything you need in just a jiffy. So save time and money when using RockAuto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? RockAuto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. RockAuto prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything you need. You just put in your make and model, and boom, they'll show you what they have for your car or truck. So make sure to head over to rockauto.com, and when you do, make sure to write Locked On their How'd You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Thank you everyone who has made Locked On Boston College your first listen. We have a great thing going here on our show, and I want to thank each and every one of you that makes it part of your daily habit to listen to Locked On Boston College, either on your commute or while you're doing dishes or wherever you listen to us. Thank you so much. We have so much in store. I can't wait to share more of our shows with you, and we couldn't do it without your support. Now, we're going into this Fred Payne commitment here. Again, a 3-star combo guard out of Texas. And I want to talk a little bit about the message that Earl Grant has been sending and how it's resonating with recruits. This gritty not pretty thing, I don't buy into it. Like it's a saying I think that sells T-shirts or it's great for social media, but I don't think it's something that super is important in terms of the recruiting trail. I think what Grant is doing on the court and in the practice room and the way he's talking to recruits is very much more effective than that kind of silly-ish saying. I kind of like it, but I still think it's kind of silly, right? You're starting to see recruits like Chaz Kelly and Fred Payne and Armani Mighty that want to be those under-recruited recruits that come to Boston College that become the diamonds in the rough. These are 3 guys. Mighty comes from Canada. You have Chaz Kelly, who moved from Texas to Pennsylvania, and then you have Fred Payne from Texas. All of them committing to Boston College with not a lot of fanfare. Payne is a 3-star recruit. Armani Mighty on 3.com loves him, but some of the major sites haven't really caught on to him. And Chaz Kelly is just kind of that typical middle-of-the-road recruit. However, this trio exemplifies exactly what the culture of Boston College should be. They're those guys that fill a role that you saw under Al Skinner with Jared Dudley, with Tyrese Rice, with Sean Marshall, Craig Smith, all the guys that many of you fell in love with Boston College basketball, these are the same types of players. These are guys that are tenacious. I see that word all the time, and I wrote it in my post on him on bcbulletin.com. They are tenacious. They are guys that put in 100%, and that's silly. But when you watch some of these teams under Steve Donahue and Jim Christian, how many times did you watch players putting their head down or giving up or just things unraveling quickly? Earl Grant is trying to prevent that with guys that have pride, guys that want to win, guys that are going to drive to be their best. And I think that Payne and Kelly and Armani Mighty really are the guys that can do that kind of thing. And I think that's what's exciting about this, because I think Grant is doing an excellent job of mixing the guys that have the dirt dog attitude, the pit bull attitude, where they're just they may not have the most talent physically, but they're gonna do a million different things to try to make you win. As a Boston Celtics fan, I've watched Marcus Smart do that for years, and they're my favorite players. They're much more interesting to watch than a guy like, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say like Kevin Durant, but I love to watch the guys that can do all these little things to win games. And BC is starting to fill their roster with these guys. Guys that can get you a steal. Guys that can shut down an opposing guard. And that is what Earl Grant is building here at Boston College. And I think that is a way to find success. I think that's the way that BC can get their team out of the basement of the ACC, get some big wins, get some big recruiting wins as well, and get them to win. Now, you can't build a team off of just dirt dogs. You can do it if you want to, but you need some guys that can score. And I think Grant sees that, and he's finding some guys as well to complement the Paynes, the Armani Mighties, and the Chaz Kellys. You have the Prince of Ligbees and the DJ Hands, who are going to be prolific scorers. And that gives your team balance, because as long as those guys can hold their own on defense, you have now two names on the offensive side that can do a whole lot. You put them next to Jaden Zachary, forget about it. You get Quentin Post out there, you got a nice, cohesive unit, a unit that can score and play defense, and you got a bench. You got Chaz Kelly, and you have, some guys coming up that can do those things off the bench. You have, Mason Madsen coming from Cincinnati, and the kid CJ Penna coming from D2 school. You're starting to build some bench, and I'd be remiss to not mention Dexter McLaughlin, who Earl Grant went out of his way to praise on the Athletic interview he just had up earlier this week. So I think in terms of roster management and building a culture, right now, Earl Grant is years ahead of where I expected him to be. I think he's doing things that are making this team exciting, and he's building a sustainable unit that's going to lose some players. You may get a guy that transfers out or goes to the NBA. That's okay, because you got a next guy up that's ready to play. And you don't have to worry about, if I lose this guy, we're completely out of luck here because we have no one behind him. They have guys now. I mean, you look at just an example I just gave, right? Chaz Kelly, right? He is going to replace Mekhi Ashton Langford, I assume, on that offense in a year. What if he leaves? What if something doesn't work out? Well, now you have Fred Payne, who kind of does the same thing off of your bench. That is what builds good basketball teams for a school like Boston College. You can get Duke. They're going to get elite blue chips, and that's all they need. BC needs to build depth, and they need to build a culture, and they have that under Earl Grant, under year one. Now, there is still loads of questions about this program moving forward, but Payne is just another example of where this program is going and how Earl Grant is building it the right way. And we'll have to wait and see. Will they take that next step next year? Will they be able to do it? And I think they're going to need some more steps in the class of 23 to continue to solidify this group. They need a top-end talent to go with that. And I have just the name, and I'm going to get into that in just a moment. thank you for listening to Locked On Boston College and making us your first listen. For your next listen, make sure to check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, our partners at BetOnline continue to be the #1 source for all your sports betting and sports info. Find all of their latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. I have been enjoying BetOnline's basketball. I've been watching a lot of the Celtics, and I've had a little fun going with, okay, this was the game that the Celtics played well. Well, the Heat are going to play well next. I'm going to go with them. I've been hitting pretty well on there. But if you have an idea, you can head over to BetOnline and check out all the great things that they have in terms of making your next wager. They're your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to sports to esports and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Make sure to head on over to BetOnline, where the game starts. This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black here. This is our Recruiting Wednesday. I had a whole other thing about some players that from football and other things that we're going to get into. Well, guess what? On tomorrow's show, I will give you some more recruiting news. I am chock full of recruiting tidbits. Fred Payne is going to take up our entire episode because this is a good one. But I got football tidbits for you tomorrow on our show. So make sure you subscribe to Locked On Boston College on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So Fred Payne, I like this commitment on a scale of 1 to 10, like 10 being this is a game-changing recruitment, and 1 like who cares? This is a guy that's going to be on the back of the bench. I'm going to give this like a 6, but it's still good. You need some 6s on your roster, but to flip and reverse it, you also need some 9s and 10s. And where could Boston College go in the class of 23 to really solidify this class and make it pop? Because the class of 2022, as I've said before, was legendary for Boston College. This class of 2022 could be game-changing for the Eagles. Prince Aligbe and DJ Hand are exciting players. These are program-changing types of players for BC. 2 4-stars that have scoring ability that are off the charts. And Armani Mighty is a big that BC hasn't had in a long time. A defensive freak that can do a lot of things. But the class of 23, I think BC should have room to sign some more. Makai Ashton Langford, as I said, will be gone. And I think they'll have at least one more spot with TJ Bickerstaff leaving to fill a role. And with Bickerstaff leaving, I think they will need another forward in this class. And there's no one I like better that's connected to Boston College than power forward TJ Power. I'm being redundant here. TJ Power, who's out in my neck of the woods in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, and playing at Worcester Academy. Now, he is a 4-star on the 247 composite. He is 80th nationally on theirs. 247 has him a little lower. He's 89th on their rankings. He's 6'7", 210. He's the number 2 recruit in the state of Massachusetts. And he's been connected to Boston College. He's been on campus. He's met with Earl Grant. And I believe that he's a legacy as well. I think there's a Boston College connection there. I'd have to look more deeply into that, but I believe he has that as well. Now, what's going to be challenging about this is his offer list. He has 18 offers, and some of them are big ones. Not huge, but Iowa, Georgetown, Georgia Tech, Indiana, Miami, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Providence, South Carolina, Stanford, USC, Virginia, Wake Forest. So you get what I'm saying here, right? A local kid with lots of big-time offers here. Why is he going to choose Boston College? Boston College, I mean, I'm talking to the choir here. You guys know how difficult it is to kind of crack some of these local recruits because they've seen, oh, why am I going to play at BC? I've watched in the last 2 years the gym's dead. There's no student interest. They're not playing very well. Why would I want to go play there? I don't know though. I feel like there's a connection with BC and Power, that goes beyond that. Now, as much as BC strikes out with some local kids, especially on the basketball on the trail, they have hit with some local kids. They had Justin Vanderbon, he left. They have the Langford brothers. They've had Deani Thompson. Again, they whiffed on that, but that's okay. So they've had some of these local kids come Could Power be the next one? I mean, he's the most exciting that they have. And I would love to see him fill that TJ Bickerstaff role moving forward. We'll have to wait and see. He's already made an official visit to Iowa. Let's see if BC gets an official too. Stay tuned to bcbulletin.com, and I'll make sure that I have all the details if Power hits Boston College. But stay tuned. This is some interesting time. Recruiting news in the month of June is going to be off the charts on football and basketball. And I can't wait to talk more about it with you. This is AJ Black. Happy Wednesday again. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at AJBlack_BC. I'm also co-hosting today's show on Locked On ACC with Candace Cooper. I get into all the quarterbacks. You want to hear where I put Phil Jakovic in the draft eligible list for next year? You can hear my thoughts on that. And also, if you are listening to this and you have YouTube, and I know you do, make sure you've hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. Just look up Locked On BC and hit subscribe. And if you have a family or friend that has YouTube, have them do it too. It really does make a difference, and it helps us tremendously. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all again soon. Take care, everyone.